celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.
Give a little bit. Give a little bit of my life.
And welcome back to Boomer Life on CL 650. I'm Joanne Sutton. We're spending an hour with our friends from the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia talking about why a donation to the society really matters. We're going to cover some areas about how they raise money, what it's used for, and we will hear from people in the community that have personally benefited from your support. Maria Howard is with us, CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of BC. Thanks for joining us today. And we're going to say hello to our very first guest, which is Kim Evans. Hi, Kim. Thanks for being here.
Good morning. Thank you.
Now, from what I understand, Kim, you had a career in commercial banking before retiring a few years ago to become a certified life cycle celebrant in weddings and funerals. And that's someone who writes their own
customized ceremonies for couples or families, for really any celebrations people find important in their lives.
Well, that's quite a career switch. Complete different areas of complete different life directions.
Right on. It's a lot more fulfilling than banking.
So Kim is a primary caregiver right now for her husband, who was initially diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, which later progressed into a form of Alzheimer's disease. So Kim, maybe you could start us off by tell us a little bit about your husband and his journey, and your journey as well.
Right. I've been married for 26 years. My husband's older than I am. And about 10 years ago, I found he was getting forgetful and really struggling with some things that hadn't been a problem before. And because he was such a physically fit man, it led to a doctor's appointment where they diagnosed MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And that was in about 2000. And then in 2007, there was a more formal diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So it's been a slow journey. And, of course, you're always adapting. As my friends from the caregiver support group say, there's always a new reality. And that can be every 6 weeks or 3 months. It's like, okay, the individual can't do this now or is struggling in this area.
Was he a professional? Did he have a career as well?
He was a salesman, but he was a jock. He played ball, baseball, slow pitch, golfed, basketball, a number of sports activities that he really did well and enjoyed.
And maybe you could just give us an example of one or two things that you noticed that were different about him that made you question his health.
I guess the first thing I thought, was he stood in the kitchen with a glass that he'd taken out of the dishwasher, and he didn't know where to put it.
And it never came to him. He
just stood there. And then finally he did open a few cupboards and put it where it needed to go. And, of course, conversations that he couldn't recall. Don't you remember that we did this yesterday? No, don't remember. So that's when it's...
A few of the red flags.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, Kim, I mentioned earlier when I was speaking with Maria that you yourself, you've both donated to the society and you've actually used their services. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that. How did you actually make the connection with the Alzheimer's Society?
When things started to become obvious to me, I reached out to Krista Frazee, who was the contact for me in Richmond, where we live. And she gave me about an hour of her time and was just wonderful and said I might consider coming to the caregiver support group. That was a little too early to digest that. But after a period of time, I thought, I'll just go and check this out. And the wonderful thing about the support group is that you are in a room full of people having very similar experiences than you, either more advanced or just beginning. And there's no obligation to speak, but the tips and the help, try this, try that, because everybody that suffers from dementia in any number of the forms it's all different. It can be hallucinations, it can be wandering, it can be incontinence, there can be a number of things. But it was just great, the tips that they were offering to help us.
what we've learned through our conversations about Alzheimer's disease, it's not just forgetfulness, is it?
No, correct.
It affects your entire life.
It affects your entire life, and personalities can change. People that are very gentle and sweet can become obnoxious, violent, and people that are very outgoing can, turn around and their world becomes very small.
So you made the connection with the Alzheimer's Society and you went to one of their support groups. And did you apply some of those tips that you learned? Did you find it helpful?
Absolutely. Little tips like don't begin conversations with, well, remember when, or don't you recall, and become far more agreeable and distract an individual. If my husband wants to do something I just know is not possible, he wants to go to Britain and travel all over and drive, and I just say, well, that's something we should talk about maybe in the spring when the weather's going to be better over there, and then 10 minutes later he's forgotten about it until a month later or whatever.
So you learn how to steer a conversation.
Correct.
So
and not feel guilty about doing that.
Oh yeah, well,
there's a lot of guilt when you sort of fib to your partner. Oh, we'll do that thing tomorrow, and you're not going to do it, because a relationship between a husband and wife, a good relationship, is truthfulness.
I don't think those are true fibs, though. They're not necessarily white lies either. It's steering a conversation.
I guess that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So now your husband's name is Jack.
Jack. Okay. And tell us what it's like with Jack today. What it's like being the caregiver for Jack.
Well, he's, I would say, at mid-stage. His short-term memory is just gone. So there's an awful lot of repetitive conversations, things that he can't remember, things that he can't recall. And what's sad now for me, because I married later in life, I was 36 and he was 54, he doesn't remember the early parts of our marriage. He doesn't remember where we went on our honeymoon and those sorts of things. So, and a lot of his friends don't really know what to do either.
They've somewhat disappeared.
So
I know you've done something really great to encourage them to come back into his life. Tell us that.
Well, I wanted him to be able to hang out with his guy friends. My girlfriends are ready and willing and able to be with him. I don't know how happy he is about that. But he was...
well, if he was a jock, I'm sure he doesn't mind being surrounded by beautiful women.
He played international slow pitch for Canada in his 60s and 70s and loves the game, coached his daughters, played the game, baseball and slow pitch. And so I bought about 10 pairs of tickets to the Vancouver Canadians baseball games, and I reached out to his friends in Rotary. He's a staunch Rotarian, and said, please come and go to a game with Jack. He'd love to do that with you. And so they stepped up bold and fast and quick and had afternoons or evening games with him. And I had time in my house by myself. My husband doesn't wander, so I can go shopping if I want or go out for lunch with my girlfriends. But sometimes I just want to be in my own home. And this was a 3 or 4 hour break, and he loved it, and his friends loved it. And there was no expectation that he sit there and have a conversation other than the game.
Yeah. And it was a game he knew.
And
he can follow along.
Exactly.
I think the key here, it was a win-win for both of you, but also for somebody wanting to help a friend or a family member that has Alzheimer's or dementia. Nobody really knows what to do. Mm-hmm. And you created an opportunity, and you somewhat told them what to do and how they could help. And it worked.
It did.
So the focus of today's show is all about donations and contributing and making donations to the Alzheimer's Society or to your charity of choice. But why did you choose this society? I think it's pretty obvious, your husband, Jack, but I think there's a bigger picture there.
There is a tsunami of dementia sufferers coming our way. And the fact that you can't diagnose it, the fact that the only treatment for it, as I know right now, is slowing it down a bit. And I even wonder, is that a good idea toward the end stages? And I don't know how much education there is in the world, in our communities, where people understand dementia, and they're not so nervous about sharing their concerns. So, I mean, for example, if my husband broke his leg and he was in an orthopedic ward in the hospital, is the nursing staff and the doctors familiar with dementia and how that individual can be affected? You know, so just understanding this disease at a grassroots level and being comfortable talking about it, the education that the Alzheimer's Society provides is so beneficial. It's helped me. It's helped the men and women that I've met through the supportive groups. You know, we need to get ahead of this, and I don't know how far down the road it's going to be, but it's definitely something I'd like to put the resources I can behind.
And is there something unique about the way you made a donation?
Well, I volunteered for Walk for Memories, and I love to be there and meet the people that have worked with Alzheimer's sufferers. And we have the greatest conversations. It's lots of fun. And I give 10% of my gross income from my business to the society. And hopefully, as my business grows, my donations will grow.
That's beautiful. What do you hope is going to be accomplished with your donation?
Awareness, research, education, and support for the caregivers. We need help, and we do want to keep our family members at home. But sometimes it's difficult, and you can't rely on your family and friends all the time. The resources that we need to keep our partners in the house sometimes are lacking.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us today about why this is so important to you?
Well, I will tell you this. I wasn't going to speak of this because it's very new and very, very difficult to talk about. But last week, my husband was diagnosed with inoperable, non-treatable cancer, and he's got a few months to live. And after getting that news, two things happened. One is we cried, and I said, "I'm sorry, hon. I'm going to take care of you as best I can for as long as I can." And I left the hospital, went home, changed and showered, and had something to eat and came back around dinner time. And he was sitting in the bed, and he looked up at me and smiled and said, "So what's up? What's happening?" And I thought, what a blessing that he doesn't know. I've met my obligation to tell him ethically what's going on, but I don't have to keep telling him. I don't want to tell him. So I've told everybody, just, he's not well. He's recovering. He'll be okay. Well, I haven't said that, but he's recovering from an infection. And the other thing that happened to me was a sense of relief and freedom that this journey was going to come to an end, and he wouldn't be, and I can't say enough good things about the facilities that individuals go to at their end of life, but he won't be sitting somewhere not knowing who he is and who I am, and that I'll be able to walk with him these last few steps. And that's how insidious this disease is, that something like cancer is a blessing. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, and it was has been an honor to be his wife. We've had more fun than 2 barrels of monkeys, and we've laughed about some of the silliness that he gets up to with this disease, and now we're at the end of the road.
So you've made decisions and arrangements are in place to keep him with you and keep him at home?
Initially, I said to myself, I want him home for as long as possible. But because we have no family here and it's just me, I don't know how much I can do, but certainly services are in place to help me as long as I can. I want him with me, and that's my objective. I know he would do that for me.
And do you have any advice to pass along for somebody who might be in a similar position as yourself?
I do. First of all, if you have anywhere to reach out and go to a support meeting, we get together now. There's about 4 or 5 women that we get together once a month, and we have the most amazing conversations. We have such healing chats and a lot of laughs, because nobody, when you're married, the relationship between a husband and wife is different than that of a parent and a child or siblings. From the moment a person's born, you're always becoming independent, trying to become independent. You don't hope to live with your brothers and sisters or your parents all of your life. And while family's important and you stay connected, you're moving away. Then you choose a partner, and hopefully you make the right choice. And you're always looking for that relationship to stay strong. And you're compromising. Your humor cements things. Your relationship, if it's happy and healthy, is one that's really treasured. So my husband's leaving me, and he doesn't want to. He's kind of like in a rowboat, and I'm on the dock, and he's pushed himself away from the dock and pushed one oar out and then the other, and we're both standing there waving each other goodbye. And so the relationship between a husband and wife is it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking to experience this, especially when I was a spinster and there was one left. There was one left for me, and it was Jack. So, yeah. I would say reach out to the society, reach out to your friends. Don't be afraid of talking about this. It's important that you get as much help as you can, and tell your friends that, you need their help. Let them understand what they can do to help you. Just be open and willing, have your heart open, and, miracles will pour into your life. And, whatever I can do for the Alzheimer's Society, whatever I can do for dementia sufferers, I would like to do. That's why I'm here today.
Kim Evans, thank you very much for sharing your story with us today.
You're welcome.
Kim has been speaking about her extremely personal experience of both donating to the Alzheimer's Society of BC and using their services as her husband Jack has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Maria Howard is also with us today, CEO of the Alzheimer's Society of BC, and we're talking about why your donation matters. We're going to get some professional advice on this matter. That's next on BoomerLife on CL 650.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.